Leadership is, first of all, are you capable of conceptualizing ideas? Are you capable of thinking? Are you capable of thinking coherently in a manner that will bring vision to policy and will transform policy to programs and will transform programs to concrete things that positively give people what they need? People need bread. Are you able to do that? Those who are stealing public resources are not able to do that. Those who got E's in school and have forged their papers cannot do that, no matter how hard we try to justify it. Those who got D minuses and forged them to C pluses cannot do that either. They can repeat and then get better grades because the Constitution is very clear. Every governor and president, deputy governor must hold a university degree from a university recognized in Kenya. The degree has to be legitimate. It can't be illegitimate. This we are going to say whether you like it or not. This we are going to say whether you abuse us or not. This we are going to say whether you support us or not, because it is the right thing to do. Socrates, the Greek philosopher, also was completely literate. The one who wrote his discourses was Plato, not himself. So we are not here being petty, being pedantic, being childish, being parochial. We are not here interested in targeting anybody. We are saying that the Constitution of Kenya 2010 is very clear. You must have a legitimate, genuine degree from a university recognized in Kenya. If you don't have that, you can do something else. You can farm, you can do business if you know how to do business. You can do anything legitimate and legal. But one thing you cannot do, you cannot be a governor and you cannot be a president or the deputies of governor or the deputies of president. It does not matter how popular you may be or you are deemed to be. Hitler was very popular in Germany in 1932 and was made Chancellor of Germany in 1932. Doesn't mean Hitler did not perpetrate a Holocaust. Popularity is not necessarily a good thing, not always. Some of the worst criminals in the world have been very popular. There was a time Idi Amin was popular in Uganda. There was a time Bokassa was popular in Central African Republic. There was a time Mobutu Sese Seko was supposed to be popular in the former Zaire, now Democratic Republic of Congo. Popularity is not the issue here. Yes, in a democratic process, the most popular wins, but you must go through a criteria before you become the most popular. You must meet the criteria of leadership. You must meet the requirements of Chapter 6, the integrity provisions. The question that voters must ask, is this person honest? Is this person a criminal or not? If you're a drug dealer, for instance, if you loot public resources, for instance, if you grab public land, for instance, if you cannot explain the sources of wealth, for those who are claiming they are earning 1,000 shillings a year but are driving Rolls Royces, if you're not able to demonstrate how you acquired that, you don't meet Chapter 6. So, let me get to the nitty-gritties of today's submission. The first thing I would like to say is I would like to ground my submissions of the Constitution. Because Kenya is a constitution of democracy, as I've said. And Kenya must be governed in accordance with the Constitution. So number one, Article 25 of the Constitution says, despite any other provision in this constitution, the following rights and fundamental freedoms shall not be limited. These are rights that are not limited by the constitution. In other words, they cannot be limited by the government. They cannot be limited by private individuals. They cannot be limited by institutions. They cannot be limited by anybody or anything in the Republic of Kenya. These are rights that are enjoyed, entrenched, and everyone is entitled to. Number one, freedom from torture and cruel, inhuman, but they mean inhumane, or degrading treatment or punishment. Meaning, nobody should be subjected to torture or inhumane, cruel, degrading, or treatment or punishment. So when you watched the other day that so-called police officer in civilian clothing, I am not even sure he was a police officer, pumping guns, bullets into an armed civilian, lying on the road, writhing in pain. That is not just barbaric, because it is. That is not just unconstitutional, because it is. That is not just illegal, because it is. That goes against this provision, this article. Because that police officer was torturing those two young men and killed them in cold blood. I don't care how unpopular what I'm saying is. I am saying, quite frankly, that is not the kind of treatment we expect of any Kenyan, guilty or not guilty. And guilt must be determined by a court of law after a fair trial, which means once you apprehend a suspect, you hand them over, you charge them, they are tried, the court determines what punishment to mete out. Similarly, because I've not seen the evidence, I've not seen the evidence this young man had been arrested. I've not seen the evidence this young man had been tried. I've not seen the evidence that this young man had been found guilty of any crime. There was absolutely no evidence on that road. All we saw was another Kenyan being killed. The same way I would condemn that Kenyan killing anybody else, killing any innocent pedestrian, any innocent business person, any innocent police officer. The rights attach to everybody. It attaches to that policeman as it attaches to the man that he's killing. So no, this I am not going to equivocate on, and I'm not going to play games on this one, and I'm not going to sweet talk the mob out there, saying kill him, kill him, kill him. It could be any of us. Number two, freedom from slavery or servitude. Number C, the right to a fair trial. Number D, the right to an order of habeas corpus. Habeas corpus simply means in Latin, in English now, that is Latin, produce the body, meaning that that police officer or whoever it is that is keeping that body must produce it. It's a must. There is no if or but. Nobody should be begged. So that police officer should be punished to the full extent of the law, should be charged with murder, and should be tried, and should be convicted, and should spend the rest of his life in committee. Similarly, the thugs that are attacking people on the street, if they are caught, if they are taken to court, should also face similar consequences. So the law is blind and should be applied blindly. There is nothing that gives the police officer more rights than a civilian. All somebody needs to do in Nairobi is to say mwizi, and any one of us can be lynched on the street there to death. Any one of us. Any one of us can be shot to death by any of those so-called cops. Trigger-happy cops are not good for democracy. So in 1986, on the 14th of November, 1987, actually not 1986, 1987, November 14th, I was abducted from my student residence at the University of Nairobi. Abducted at 3 o'clock in the morning by plainclothes police officers, blindfolded, put in the boot of the car, and taken to places I can't describe, ended up at Nyayo House. This is not new. Police officers, security officers have been abusing their power for many years. Raila Odinga was detained similarly. So was Koigi Waomwere. So are many other people, including Gitobwe Manyara that I've just cited. There are a lot of courageous Kenyans that have suffered because of this kind of arbitrary power, arbitrary use, abuse of lethal power. Just because you're holding a gun does not mean you have more rights than others. We've seen thugs the other day, 2 months ago. Somebody called Chris Obure, a young man, a crook in Nairobi, was also trying to pistol whip some people at a pub or anybody else that he disagreed with. We've seen Kobia, this fake businessman in town, who is probably a drug dealer, kidnapping somebody from a bar and taking that somebody and holding that somebody hostage because that somebody is supposed to have owed him some money. They were not killed on the street. They were not killed where they were doing these things. Why? What is the difference? The difference is because those are supposed to be money. Those people are supposed to have a lot of money. There was no outcry from Kenyans on Twitter. There was no outcry from Kenyans on Facebook. Was there an outcry when Kideru looted 200 billion shillings of your money? Was there an outcry when Kideru physically assaulted Shebez? Because if he could do that on live television, a governor against a woman representative, that is a person who can kill in the privacy of his home. That is what criminals are made of. Now, you also know, a few years ago, some of you may not have been adults. There were some two thugs here called Atur brothers. They came here, they were brought here by some high-flying rich people in government, and they produced guns at the Kenyatta International Airport. And they got away from the Kenyatta International Airport where there are armed police officers, where there is even an army. There are many, many security officers who are armed, refused to pay their custom duty, and drove out of there, and were never arrested. We must ask this question. How about Waiganjo, Joshua Waiganjo, the fake police officer that rose through the ranks almost to the point where he was an OCPD? He was controlling legitimate police officers. He was holding a gun that he was not entitled to hold. He was arresting people, even though he had no power to arrest. He was punishing, basically doing all the criminal things. Was he killed? Was he eliminated? Was he executed? No. Between that young man on the street and Waiganjo, who is more of a danger to society? We must be a country that have balance when we are judging things. So Article 25 is very clear. Nobody is allowed to torture. Nobody is allowed to treat anybody cruelly. Nobody is allowed to subject anybody to inhumane treatment or degrading treatment or punishment. And nobody is supposed to subject anyone to slavery or servitude. So I've had Kenyans give me very fake, very implausible arguments, saying these looters are not affecting them directly. These looters are stealing their taxes. So they believe that if somebody is stealing your taxes, they are less of criminals than a street homeless person stealing 200 shillings from them. No, ma'am. No, young man. You are wrong. It is because of the looter that we have the homeless. It's a direct correlation. It is because these people are looting billions of our money that should create a conducive environment for business, a conducive environment for opportunities that is enough to create employment for these young people, is enough to train them so that they become productive members of society, is there enough to build homes, safe homes, is enough to rehabilitate them, is enough to train them. That is why we are having them. Somebody is saying, look, Miguna, they have the homeless in the US or in Canada. Yes, they do. So what? They do. But what is the percentage of the homeless in Canada or the US? The fact is this. Number one, the unemployment rate in Kenya is 65%. That is unsustainable. The unemployment rate in Canada is 3%. It rotates between 1 and 7%. The US the same, 1 and 7%. So yes, you will have a few people that cannot survive in a competitive economy. Yes, you will have that. And yes, you will have a very minuscule people if we have proper governance. A minuscule that probably because of mental health issues or psychological issues or psychiatric issues, or maybe because of social issues, find themselves on the street. But what do they do abroad? What do? They build homes for them. They build shelters for them. They have what is called a social welfare system. They have mandatory health care for the vulnerable. They have counseling programs for them. They have rehabilitation facilities for them. They have soup kitchens for them. They have places these people can get clothing. So, of course, a person who is well taken care of would most likely not engage in dangerous activity such as snatching your cell phone so that they can sell that for maybe 50 shillings so that they can have a meal. I'm not justifying a snatching of a phone. I am not justifying theft. I am not justifying thuggery. I am not justifying criminality. I am explaining that Kenya is a society where we don't take care of the vulnerable, and we can and we should and we must. It is in the Constitution. I will refer you to the Constitution. The Constitution of Kenya 2010 provides for economic and social rights. And this is what it says at Article 43. Every person has the right to A, to the highest attainable standard of health, which includes the right to healthcare services, including reproductive healthcare. B, to accessible and adequate housing and to reasonable standards of sanitation. C, to be free from hunger and to have adequate food of acceptable quality. D, to clean and safe water in adequate quantities. E, to social security. F, to education. E, to social security. F, to education. These are rights that are in the Constitution. These are rights. And you all know that a lot of young people in Kenya, I'm talking now of even educated, learned young people in Kenya. Young people who have gone to Form 4 and done their KCSE and did not even get D- and E. Young people who got even A's. Young people who even got B's. Young people who got C's. Young people who have demonstrated that they are hardworking, they are bright, they are smart, they are law-abiding, they have done what a society expects them to do. They have gone through school, they have sat exams, they have passed. They want to go either further or they want to work. What happens? They are all unemployed. Many of them are poor, so they can't even go to university, they can't go to colleges, they're living in slums. Others have gone to college. They have diplomas, they have certificates. Many of them even have degrees from recognized universities. The University of Nairobi, Strathmore, KU, Egerton, Moi, name them. The so-called cream universities in Kenya. And what is it that they are doing? They are living in complete squalor in the 100 and more slums in the Republic of Kenya or in Nairobi. In Nairobi alone, there are more than 100. In Nairobi alone. So, if or when some of these young men are lured into crime and get involved in crime, and I'm not excusing crime, but I'm saying, assuming they are lured into crime, honestly, yes, we blame them, but we also blame society. We also blame the leadership that have abandoned them, that are not taking care of them, that have looted everything that should have made them productive members of society. That we have to say. And how about the universities that have been set up by conmen to lure some of these young people so that they get fake university degrees that will make them unemployable? Not everybody can sell drugs and make it, like some of your leaders are doing, like Sonko and Joe are doing, for example. Not everybody can do that. You have only two so-called successful drug dealers in public office in Kenya. Right? And how many millions are we? We are more than 45 million people. So you can't tell people who have gone to school and have passed, go become a drug dealer so that you can make money. You can't tell them to go hire guns so that they become robbers, so that they become economically successful. That is not sustainable. So you have here, Grepsa University, for example, Kiriri Women's University, University of East Africa, which have been declared to be universities offering and granting fake degrees. So the majority of people that end up in these universities, for instance, not only will join the long list of the 65% youth who are unemployed, but have no chance of employment, even if we created it. But let me tell you something. Miguna grew up dirt poor. Maybe you can say filthy poor. Mine was beyond the slums. Where I come from, Apondo village, Magina, in Kano Plains, in Nyanza, is dirt poor. I grew up poor, poorer than poor. I couldn't pay my tuition. So yes, I took a right turn. Sometimes it is luck, sometimes it is God, combination of other things plus personal effort. I made it out of that poverty. Even as I speak today, I will tell you, from Onjiko Secondary School where I did my O-levels, where some other people got D- and E's, I had not paid my tuition when I did my exam. The only reason I was allowed to do the exam and allowed to collect my certificate is because I was a good student, and the school administration, the principal, the headmaster, the teachers, they felt that it would be very unfair, it would reduce their performance. I was allowed to do the exam. I did the exam. I went to Jiris High School in Murang'a. I did my A-levels there. I was chased away from school more than 20 times to go look for fees. I was not able to. Again, at Jiris High School, I was allowed to do the exam. And in fact, I thank Mr. Githinji who later on succeeded Mr. Ndumu as the principal of Njiri's, who sent me my certificate in Canada, even though I had not fully paid my tuition. I'm not a man who came this far because of privilege. So when I hear some privileged kids claiming that they failed because they were poor, I bleed inside. It is an insult to poor kids who have struggled and overcome poverty and overcome the deprivations that they have faced. Yes, there are few that because of poverty could probably not sit the exam. And yes, not everybody was equally gifted. Some of them were not performing very well because, as you know, different things affect different people differently. So yes, there are those like that. But it was not the major thing. In fact, the majority of best students in Kenya, starting with Mr. Otieno Mito from, Otieno Mito did his exams in Mbita High School and beat everybody in the Republic of Kenya. Now, Mbita is not one of the best schools, but he was #1 in our year in O levels and was #1 in our year in O levels from Mango High School. He came from Mbita to Mango High School. He was completely poor. I did not always live here. I could not even afford to live in Kibra when I was a university student at the University of Nairobi. If it was not because of the student loan that we used to call boom, that we used to be given, I would not have attended University of Nairobi. And yes, I know things have changed. And yes, I know probably the loans are not given now to poor students the way they used to be. But to claim that Miguna does not understand poverty, Miguna does not understand what people in Eastlands are facing, when some of these people are on Twitter, are on Facebook 24/7, therefore they have bundles, they have extra money to spend on bundles, and are listening to me right now, is outrageous. It's scandalous. Because I do understand poverty. Some of my relatives, as we speak, live in Githogoro, it's a slum. Live in Kibra, it's a slum. Live in Korogocho and Kangware, and I've been to their homes. I know how they live. I eat in those shacks. I know how it feels. They are not happy about it. They want a way out. And the only way out is to elect a government of integrity, led by a person of integrity with concrete policies, with concrete plans, and with a commitment to transformation. It can be done. It must be done. It shall be done. As I started this address, I said Ogoto Meli, a sage philosopher from Southern Sudan, articulated clear, pristine thoughts that added value to the world view without the ability to read and write, because he had not gone to school. It doesn't mean if you're not able to read and write, your IQ is low. That's different. It's different from somebody who actually goes to school and fails. That person's IQ is low because they have been tested and found wanting. A person who has not gone through formal learning but is able to conceptualize ideas can become a professor. In fact, there are illiterate professors in the world. Let me give you this example. In Canada, there is a man called Stephen Lewis. Stephen Lewis comes from a privileged background, but did not manage to finish university. So he dropped out of university. He has no degree, he has no diploma. But is one of the most articulate public figures in the world and has been given degrees, honorary degrees, all over the world, and has represented the UN and other international bodies all over the world. In other words, Miguna is not petty. Miguna is not naive. Miguna is not stupid. Miguna is not driven by selfishness or malice. I am driven by a deep commitment to this country, a deep commitment for humanity, a deep commitment for transformation.